Health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to the Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show. I'm your host, Sara Banta. I'm a wife, a busy mom of three, and the founder of the cutting edge and award-winning supplement brand Accelerated Health Products. This podcast is more than just a source of information. It's a community for you and for those looking to optimize their health. I release new episodes every Monday and Tuesday live and a bonus one on Thursday. So remember to subscribe and add to your playlist so you never miss a show, and join my free health group coaching on Telegram. There is no downside. I answer your questions, and I post on a daily basis, teaching you and keeping you moving forward. That's the goal, right? The details can be found on my website, sarabantahealth.com. My goal is to reach everyone who needs me with my message of healing. So help me with this goal, please. I cannot do it alone. By sharing this podcast with a few friends and loved ones, and together we can empower each other on our journey to optimal health. Today, we are talking about the 5 health disruptors nobody's talking about. And I've got the amazing Teri Cochrane back. She is on the cutting edge. And you know, I do things only on the cutting edge, only things that work. And that is why she is one of my mentors. She's a dedicated clinician, advisor, and speaker. She's the author of The Wildatarian Diet. You must go read it. This is why I talk about wild animal meat. And you go, what are you talking about? This is why. She advises world-class athletes and some of the top doctors and influencers around the world, offering both clinical advice as well as her gifts as a medical intuitive to help maximize their human potential. Welcome back, Teri. How are you?
Hi, Sarah. How are you? Happy Tuesday.
I'm amazing because I get to talk to you. And I was telling my wonderful daughter this morning, I said, I'm so excited. I selfishly get to ask Teri all of my questions on the podcast today. But we have had a few podcasts, and every time there's something new because you are always at the brink of the new research. You're doing your own research. You've got your own N of thousands of your own clients that are teaching you on a daily basis where you find these common threads. And that's why I'm just so excited, because when you go on the typical health podcast right now, keto's out, right? Carnivore's out. But people are trying to figure out what is the key. And it's not just that simple, right? It's not. It's an intricate system and formula, because we are intricate, very complex individuals in a very complex world. So maybe we can start, before we get into the 5 disruptors, what has changed? Why are all of these symptoms coming up? And I'm getting people out of the woodwork saying, I haven't changed anything, 10 pounds out of the blue since Christmas. I eat hardly anything. I'm down to 4 foods and I'm gaining weight. And little do they know that 2 of those 4 foods are in the 5 health disruptors, right? So what is going on?
Well, we've had a systemic change over the last 4 years. The introduction of the pandemic fundamentally changed many of our biochemical systems in our bodies, so that the way that we used to respond to things are now different. The mechanisms of action changed. And weight is one of the many factors that has changed. I call it the COVID-19. We think about the freshman 15, and I call it the COVID-19, and more than that in many cases. So why? And we'll get into the 5 disruptors, which the pandemic has had an exacerbating impact on, but it was first the food supply. Also, what this pandemic has fundamentally changed beyond the mechanisms of action are undergirded in pathogenicity. And this is one of the the 4 portals of genetic expression for the Cochrane method. And we know clinically that the spike protein, however it got into your system, is now reactivating varicella, Epstein-Barr, cytomegalo, the herpes family, Coxsackie, and even mimics the glycoprotein in the MMR vaccine that then disrupts insulin. Just before we aired, I saw a client who drove all the way from Florida to see me. She's doing much better. I've been working with her family. I forgot how long. I helped her dad long ago. And she had been a client of mine and then moved, and she called me. She's like, nobody can figure me out. This was a month ago. So I thought I have to come back to you. And what we discerned was, and this is new, varicella is really, really, really a nasty little sucker. Sort of like the Joker in, Batman of the supervillains. That was the most scary one to me. So varicella is now attacking the trigeminal nerve, which is called the suicide nerve. And people are having significant what perceives to be dental issues because they can't bite anymore. There's so much nerve irritation. So they go and they're put on antibiotics and they're put on a root canal. And then they are given a crown. And ultimately, it's the inflammation of that trigeminal nerve that is causing tremendous pain. Varicella also impacts the lower colon for ulcerative colitis. It increases estrogen and it exacerbates PCOS. It's been tied to Bell's palsy. We just had an MS reversal because of the varicella virus. We also worked with this is N of 1, a 3rd stage colon cancer individual that was told she was going to have her colon resected. And it was a very, very aggressive cancer, and it's gone. Now, we worked collaboratively, but the doctors couldn't believe it. And she said she's felt the best she's felt ever while she was having chemo. And when they went back to remove the tumors, they were just scar tissue. So we tied varicella to many other things as well. So GI, neurological, dental, if you will, endocrine. So that one's a big one. And we're very viral as a population, and I'm pioneering in the amyloids, which help to reactivate viruses. So there's just been a lot of change in our pathogenicity, in our mechanisms of action, in our detoxification systems because of the changes, our liver, our kidneys, our lymph, our skin. So those we'll get deep into it, but it's just fundamentally different.
Yeah, and speaking of the varicella virus, if you've been listening to me, you know that it was found, and Teri found it, and then it was confirmed by an actual physical scan that I had the varicella virus in my optic nerve. And what's funny is I saw a practitioner that is not a health practitioner, a different type of practitioner, and I mentioned I mentioned my optic nerve and blurred vision, and he said, yeah, a lot of people are experiencing optic nerve issues, and he's not a practitioner. He doesn't know anything about the varicella virus, but he's seen it. And that I've also had 2 people in my life that have been hospitalized with ulcerative colitis out of the blue. And I actually was just contacted about a nerve issue in somebody that's unknown cause, and they are seeking guidance. And I'm wondering if it has to do with the varicella virus. So all of these things are coming up, and I have people in my life that just want to lose weight, and they're like, Sara, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to start eating chicken again. I'm like, well, okay. Chicken is the low calorie white meat. I understand that, but it's not just about calories. There's so much more that is going on. And I can tell you just on a basic level, and tell me if I'm wrong, Teri, if your immune system is lowered because it is fighting something that this chicken low calorie white meat triggered, then your metabolism's going to lower. Your thyroid's going to say, hey, we got to save those calories because we got to strengthen this immune system and fight something off. So some of these things are backfiring. So I want to get into all of it. Let's start. Where do you want to start with the 5 disruptors? Because there's a progression, and the new one is histamine, but I feel like we should start with the others and how they interplay with histamine. And speaking of histamine, I've had increased histamine response in my body. Never had allergies in my life. That's never been my issue. I've always had gut issues, but I've had rashes. That was part of the inflammation in my optic nerve, water retention, all of this stuff. And my daughter at the dinner table last night, out of the blue, goes, my eyes are itching. I'm like, that's histamine. And it's hitting us in different ways that we've never experienced before.
Okay, so let's start with histamine, which is the newbie on the block. Okay. And then we'll kind of work backwards to what I had the 4 big disruptors in my Wilditarian book. And now through the pandemic, we've added the 5th one. So what is histamine? Histamine is usually thought of as allergy eyes, much like your daughter's, runny nose, itchy eyes, sneezing, maybe a little bit of congestion in the lungs. But histamine itself is an excitatory neurotransmitter. So histamine is sort of like epinephrine, and it can beat serotonin if you have serotonin syndrome. It's in the neurotransmitter family. And the clinical literature suggests that the spike protein can turn on the histamine receptor gene. Now, why is that significant? Well, because the histamine receptor gene also then intersects with sulfur, which is another one of my big 4. Sulfur and histamine are very linked in the phase 1 liver detoxification pathways, which is how you detoxify toxins, binders, biofilm, how you detoxify pharmaceuticals, how you detoxify your birth control pills, how do you detoxify that anesthesia, even steroids, even IVs, even stem cell treatments, which are inflammatory. So histamine is a really, really big deal, because now through our research, we have noted to the weight gain, histamine is dislodging insulin. Insulin is the fat storage hormone. Insulin can also cause the girth here, but it's really driven by histamine. Also new to the game is histamine turns off the receptor to the LDL cholesterol. So people's cholesterol is way high, and statins aren't helping it. So why is cholesterol relevant in weight gain? Well, it's a hormone precursor and it's fat soluble. So it's the backbone of hormones. And if you're not making your cholesterol appropriately, it's going to once again dislodge insulin indirectly. So histamine can make you gain weight. Histamine can dislodge your cholesterol. Histamine can also cause massive anxiety. Histamine has been tied to panic attacks, tachycardia. It's been tied to heart inflammation. Actually, the beautiful Dr. Bruce Lipton and I had a conversation a couple of months ago on histamine and the inflammation of the heart. And he shared with me, Teri, you're one of the few people that understands this, and you apply it clinically. And so it's insidious. And so I'm saying we should all be thinking about what is our best antihistamine. I love quercetin with bromelain. It's a mast cell stabilizer. It's a natural antihistamine. If you have a DAO enzyme variance, which you can find out from your genetics, the DAO enzyme is phenomenal. Sometimes cromolyn, which you can take nasocrom, which is a mast cell stabilizer, and that's over-the-counter. Oral cromolyn is prescription. You would have to talk to your doctor about that. Many people I'm seeing take ketotifen, which is another antihistamine. And the histamine has to do with estrogen. So the more histamine you have, the more estrogen you have, and the more estrogen you have, then your ovaries start getting involved, and that can then hit candida, because estrogen feeds on candida and candida feeds on estrogen. And now you've got oxalates involved, because oxalates are the piece that another big disruptor that feeds candida, that feeds cysts, ovarian cysts, breast cysts. It also is tied to heart disease, which then when you've got that histamine crossover. They're all layered. So histamine, sulfur, oxalates, layered. And then the big one is the amyloids, which is the ones that are flipping on those, potentially flipping on those viruses.
Okay, real quick before you go on, cholesterol. And I've seen blood tests where people are like, my cholesterol out of nowhere, nothing's changed, has shot through the roof. Is this affecting only LDL, or is it HDL, LDL, VLDL? Is it overall increase?
It's affecting it's affecting LDL, it's affecting VLDL, it's affecting the lipoprotein structure. Okay. So it's affecting it in many ways. And another adjunct to the amyloid piece and the spike protein piece is iron. I consider iron part of the fat metabolism impairment. Iron is high in people that have never had iron overload. We've had vegetarians for the first time in their lives have elevated cholesterol and even elevated iron levels. And I talked to, again, last week, I talked to Dr. Morley Robbins, the expert on iron and copper. And we know that the spike protein brings iron to a high level, and all that zinc that we took increases iron, which makes iron like unabashed. And then it also, the spike protein also lowers copper levels. That's why I love your copper. And copper is the antagonist to iron in either direction, because some people are having low iron, but it's really stuck in the tissues, and copper makes iron more bioavailable.
So is there Morley, and he's been on my show, so if anyone is wondering who he is, make sure you go back and listen to him. He's a wealth of knowledge. He would say that very few, maybe 1% of the population needs iron supplementation. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, unless you're having literally internal microbleeding where you're losing iron. I believe that to be true. There's an anecdotal experience with a client of mine whose iron was 2, but it was that malabsorption, and I really suggested her against taking in a transfusion, but the doctors are very concerned. Her iron went to 600, and she turned on 3 autoimmune conditions. Mm-hmm. So what we needed to make that iron more bioavailable. Copper is one way, if you can handle it. Bison liver, actually vitamin A and retinol. Dr. Stephen Spencer, who's a naturopath, is also very well versed in this. He's also a friend and colleague of Morley. And it's really become a thing. We had one client that was Hashimoto's and couldn't get her iron up and couldn't get rid of her Hashimoto's. She'd been taking iron forever and couldn't get her iron up. We checked her ceruloplasmin. We started her on aspirin and baking soda with orange juice and retinol and bison liver. And guess what? Iron stabilized and no more Hashimoto's.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay, so that opens a whole nother can of worms, because people are taking these supplements that are backfiring, and that leads me into other supplements that could be backfiring, like sulfur-based supplements, MSM. And then we had talked about, for me personally, creatine, how that could be triggering some things and fortifying the varicella virus, among other things. So let's talk about some supplements that could be damaging you.
So MSM is really interesting because that's used in a lot of formulations for joint and for the head. And even before the pandemic, if you're an overmethylator, which people are it's very little talked about. So let's just deconstruct what methylation is and how you, as a practitioner or as a layperson, understand your methylation pathways. It's not just about MTHFR, guys, and not that mother fricker gene, as we call it. It's not just about that. It's just one of many in the methylation pathway. If you also have the COMP gene, if you also have a CBS gene, which has to do with sulfation, those 3 genes, in my experience, can help you become an over-methylator. And so what does that mean? It means that B12 is going to be a problem because B12 then becomes excitatory. It means that SAMe is also going to be a problem because you also have that CBS gene, and that's a sulfur processing gene. It means that folate is going to be a problem because it's going to increase that methylation. So that alone, before the pandemic, we were having issues with overmethylation. Now enter the spike protein turning on the histamine response, which then intersects with sulfur, which then if you have those other two genes are really going to make you overmethylating. And then MSM, glutathione, garlic supplementally, alpha lipoic acid, and the big one in the pandemic, NAC.
I see.
Right? So if you have genetic vulnerabilities like I do and like you do, and you're taking those things, it's going to be a big, big problem. We had someone, again, pre-pandemic who was taking glutathione IVs, and her psoriasis was so bad, she looked like a tree trunk. Mm-hmm. And she was at one of the biggest hospital centers, most renowned in the country. And they weren't helping her. They were giving her all the things that she couldn't take. And it was really exacerbating a very significant psoriatic condition. So we just had somebody who took a sulfa drug and had a massive, massive response. Stevens-Johnson syndrome. That is where the mucous membranes throughout your body start combusting. They start turning into ulcerations. Stevens-Johnson's can be deadly. And so that's how important these things are. You think you're going to, do something good for yourself, and with glutathione and or vitamin C, which increases iron, which then increases oxalates. If you have those three things, it could be problematic. So people are taking glutathione IVs and vitamin C IVs and vitamin B12 IVs, and they feel like crap. And their practitioners are like, well, you're just herxing. I call BS on that. Okay. There's something going on in the body. It didn't like it. And we have to listen.
So you mentioned joints, and I feel like a lot of people take turmeric for their joints, and then they also take collagen. And I'm a fan of collagen, but there's right and wrong collagen. So touch on turmeric, and then let's get into the differences in the different collagens and what to look out for.
Okay, so turmeric has a multi-pronged impact. If you have the CYP2D6 genetic variant, you're not going to like turmeric because it's going to really downregulate your phase 1 liver detoxification, which is tied to histamine and sulfur, by up to 50%. So there's that piece. Then we have another one of the big four called oxalates that I've mentioned. Turmeric is a heavy oxalate. And so if you have the CYP2D6 plus an oxalate, you're screwed. Because that could actually make you more jointy. Why? Because oxalates create oxalate crystals, or can create oxalate crystals, especially at the joints. And so you take turmeric, you take it therapeutically, you're drinking that golden milk, and it's going to be a problem. Now, it's not a problem for everyone. However, because again, the spike protein disrupted the calcium channel pathway, which makes us more likely to build oxalates. You have turmeric, it's an oxalate. You're getting, you're hitting a tipping point. And so we really have to look at those tipping points.
So real quick on that, essentially our ability to process oxalates 4 years ago might be at this level, but now because of the spike protein for everybody, regardless of your genetics, it has come down relatively speaking.
So yes, and that's why we're seeing a lot of heart conditions, the myocardial infarctions. That's a fancy word for heart attack. It's tied to oxalate metabolism. It's not the only thing, but it is a thing. It's a thing. And they're looking at amyloid fibrils in the individuals of COVID cadavers. So amyloid fibrils and oxalates, they make things. They make cysts, they make fibrils, right? So blood clots, pulmonary embolisms, cysts in the thyroid, cysts everywhere, right? PCOS, this pituitary adenomas is a cyst, right? It's a growth, any kind of growth, neuromas, lipomas, any omas that are that are fat soluble under the skin, that's tied on some level to oxalates as well, and amyloids. And so they all matter. And then, so now I'm going to touch on the amyloids, and those are indigestible protein structures that don't break down through the cooking process. And that was one of my big discoveries almost a decade ago, when I helped somebody, again, with end-stage cancer, not die because he had amyloidosis, amyloids measured by light chains. He was given his last rites, told to go home. This was one of my forays into this phenomena of amyloids. And Glenn is alive 10 years later, and he's doing great. And so amyloids were a very, very big contributor to his situation, along with other things, but amyloids were the big ones. And I'm like, oh my gosh, when I discovered the whole concept of amyloids, that they were coming from our food supply, and the dirty bird being the most amyloid rich bird because of the crowding conditions, which have contributed to these indigestible proteins being formed in the tissues of these animals, chicken being the worst, and then commercially farmed meat, and then pork and turkey. That's why wild came into existence. I did the study to inform myself that if we take on lower burdened amyloids, we're not making these truncated protein structures, which not only do bad things and create things in our body, they also help to turn on viral loads. And so that's why autoimmunity, even 8 years ago, was already 1 in 14. Now autoimmunity, as you've noted as well, Sarah, is, I don't even know the statistics.
Yeah.
It's up like this. It's not just like this. It's like, and so we are ever more busy. We have a 911 call to our clinic almost daily, because another new thing is going on and the doctors are confused, or the doctors just don't have the level of information to be able to make decisions based on this new phenomenon, this layering, as I call it.
So just to clarify, everyone, these amyloids are in chicken, in turkey, in pork, conventionally raised beef, other poultry, but you are good to go with duck or pheasant or wild poultry. Would that be correct?
Yes, wild turkey, Cornish game hen, we haven't had problems with. Quail, pheasant is great. I love pheasant. Like I eat it. I haven't had a piece of chicken in almost 8 years now. It'll be 8 years in August. And I don't miss it. And it can actually, so I will say, if chicken is contributing to turning on a virus that has to do with the way that your pancreatic cells work, and especially in the beta cells, it could actually be contributing to your becoming insulin resistant, which is contributing to your weight gain. So chicken can make you fat, effectively, kind of like bottom line.
Right. And I've done 2 studies on, or 2 podcasts on Alzheimer's lately, because it is blowing up in the news, right? And they're talking about the beta amyloid. So can you talk about the connection? Is that the same amyloid?
Yes, they're all connected. Amyloids are amyloids or amyloids. There's alpha amyloids, beta amyloids, but they're effectively amyloids. And so Alzheimer's is now the fifth leading cause of death in the United States. That was before the pandemic. That's a statistic. I believe it was 2019. And so Alzheimer's has also been called type 3 diabetes, back to insulin, back to histamine, back to protein. Okay. So we really have to look at the intersection of these disruptors that layer one another, and be mindful. Am I saying never have a piece of broccoli, which is the sulfur, or never have some spinach, which is an oxalate, or never have berries, which are an oxalate, or never have a chocolate, which is histamine, or a banana or an avocado, which are considered histamine? Never saying never. Is just something sometimes, and understand your genetic blueprint and your current state of health and your supplementation plan and your IVs and your pharmaceuticals. Anything. My new phrase is, we look at everything that goes in you, on you, or around you.
Okay.
Okay.
And I have to speak to my own experience with you is that I've been in a great state of health where I've been able to eat all of the things that you've talked about. Maybe not chicken, but I still was able to eat the oxalates, the sulfur, what have you. And then last time I saw you when my varicella virus was active, you said absolutely no amyloids whatsoever and stay off the sulfur and oxalates. And I was doing better with my fat, but it shows that it's truly complicated, and we are such a miracle beings, and we're not simple, right? So I want to real quick, oxalates, berries, spinach, kale, Swiss chard. What are the big ones I'm missing? Almonds.
So almonds, black beans, spinach in the oxalate categories with berries. Oats are another oxalate. However, hierarchy of needs. If you need to pull hormones, you may be able to do oats, but not every day.
Okay.
Right? And turmeric is a big oxalate.
Right. And sulfur vegetables are the cruciferous vegetables. That was the aha moment when I first came to you. I was retaining 5 pounds of water. Didn't know why, because I was eating low carb and I was eating a ton of cabbage and broccoli and cauliflower. All of those cruciferous vegetables, the dim
and killer kale. And Mike Tyson, who I worked with for his first fight, he went on Rogan and he's like, kale kills me, man, and I can't eat blueberries. And we made him buy some Tyson because we helped him be the best version of himself to ready himself for that fight at that time. And you've been told by most people, if you are oriented and lean into health, you're going to say, I need to eat berries because they're high in antioxidants and phytonutrients. And I certainly need to eat spinach because it's really high in iron, and iron is really good for my brain, but it's also high in oxalates. And I really need to eat that kale because kale is a superfood, and it's not. Kale is a super sponge. It also really absorbs a lot of the pesticides, which again, if you have impaired liver detoxification, that's just going to be toxic.
Right. And everyone's doing these green drinks, and I actually love it when someone comes to me and they're health minded and they're doing the green drinks and they're having their eggs and they're having their chicken and broccoli for dinner and they're trying, because that shows me that I'm dealing with something who's willing to be disciplined, but we just need to switch everything. And they don't know that everything they're doing is going against them. And when my one question to you when I first saw you was, well, shoot, if I'm not taking in our bodies need sulfur. So if I'm not eating them, then am I going to fall apart? And you said, well, you're not absorbing them anyway, right? And you're not absorbing any of the good stuff because it's causing leaky gut and issues there. So that was an aha moment for me, where you have this mindset where you've been told you need these nutrients, you need this food. And also, we haven't even talked about the fact that the soils are completely depleted and we're not getting them from these vegetables anyways, right?
Right. And I will say that the one place where I eat sulfur, and I eat it regularly, is in my wild meats, because they have a full spectrum compound of amino acids, and some of those amino acids are sulfur rich. Okay, like taurine. Taurine's an amino acid that's sulfur rich. Mm-hmm. There are other cysteine amino acid that's sulfur rich. Methionine. These are all found in meats, but they have the balancing amino acids that allow us to consume them. But they have to be the right meats that don't have the amyloid layer. So we can get them, and eggs, sometimes, right? If I've been spiked, if I've been sick, if I've had any kind of virus, I don't eat eggs for quite a while, because eggs, if you think about, eggs feed the viral load. And if you think of the work of Anthony Williams, who's really said eggs are the devil on every occasion because of their connection to reactivation of the Epstein virus, that's his work in particular. Eggs are viral little, we're poking the bear. Mm-hmm. So know your current state of health, and we can ask for our IgGs, immunogammaglobulins, in the herpes family of viruses to be tested by our doctors. If they're elevated, that's a smoking gun. And all of a sudden you have an autoimmune condition. Consider that to be potentially contributory to what's going on with you.
Okay. Well, we've talked about sulfur, oxalates, histamine, and amyloids. And then there's the big fat.
The big F word.
Right. Teri, fat can't make you fat. Fat can't cause insulin resistance, right?
Wrong. So again, back to your genetic blueprint and your current state of health, especially for women who have certain genetic predispositions of not being able to break down fat. If you can't break down fat, it's going to get locked up in your liver and potentially back in your lymph back up, and then you're going to get fluffy. We're also experiencing the slow drip stress, not so much slow drip anymore. It's dripping pretty quick now in this world. And so I call stress the dirty cupcake. It's a fat and a sugar. It's a hormone. It's a neurohormone. It's a stress hormone. It's cortisol. It's epinephrine. And so that can alone turn on viral loads, open up the tight junctions of your gut, make you fat malabsorbed, do a whole host of bad things. And so when you're trying to eat a lot of fat and you are not breaking it down, you can end up with hormone dysregulation, neurohormone dysregulation, which means your neurotransmitters, and it can make you depressed, anxious. Follow that line. It can make you have massive edema because the second role of the lymphatic channel is fat metabolism. It can feed biofilm of organisms. Okay. It can really mess up our thyroid, all of our hormones, because especially if we're taking exogenous hormones, that means we're on hormone therapy. We recently had an individual who we doubled their T by making their fat metabolism better.
Wow.
So when we are able to break down fats, we use what we have more efficiently. Okay. So we really need to understand, what are my genetic vulnerabilities? Do I have a lot of fat metabolism impairment genes? That's a methylation C677T. There's a bile acid transfer gene. There's the APO gene, which also goes to Alzheimer's. It's a cholesterol-based gene. It's the VDR gene that has to do with vitamin D receptor. There's, oh my gosh, the ALCAT gene, which has to do how you metabolize vitamin A. There's the FADS gene, FADS. There's the PEMT gene that has to do with how you metabolize choline. It's also fat soluble, or your inability. So we need to know our genes. Know your genes. Know what you're putting in you that's exogenous. Are you taking a bunch of essential fatty acids? Are you taking a bunch of not just fish oil, but are you taking hormones? Are you taking estrogen as a woman? Are you taking testosterone as a woman or a man? If you can't break it down, you're making your body work super hard and it's not doing what it's supposed to do.
So by taking an exogenous testosterone, if you're in not a good state of health, that could actually cause weight gain or fat gain?
Yes, absolutely. And it's an androgenic hormone, which has downstream impacts for more, much more serious conditions. I worked with an ER doctor. He was working night shifts, so his endocrine system was really being challenged, right? He was on testosterone. He couldn't get his testosterone up. He's now, we took him off of the T in concert with his own doctor. We never tell people to get off things, but on their own. We always work collaboratively with their medical practitioners. We helped metabolize his fats. And again, testosterone got better without testosterone. And he lost weight. He's looking amazing. There's ways to hack this, biohack this, super biohack it, when you understand the N of one, which is you. And that's why our method is so different than anyone else's.
Right. Well, the fat thing is also huge in the news and trending right now because everybody is getting off of keto. They're eating more carbs. But people are now fighting over the good fat versus the bad fat, the good carbs versus the bad carbs. And I go through this on my website, learning from you and through my accelerated food guide. But the the debate on linoleic acid, PUFAS versus saturated fat. Can you speak to that?
Okay. So not all oil. It's just like everything else with me. Some things sometimes, and who are you, how are you, and why are you right now? Right. And so I love butter. I love the right kind of butter from a happy cow that's not full of estrogen, that's not full of hormones, pesticides, what else they fed them. Butter has butyric acid, which has been known to support the good colonic bacteria. Butter helps my brain be happy. Okay. Now, if I'm taking butter and I'm taking a hormone and I'm taking a lot of essential fatty acids and I have fat metabolism genes, then maybe that butter's not so right for me right now. And then if I pull everything else off and add the butter back in, then I'm okay.
Right.
So the PUFAs are, they're saying, boy, that is just so bad because it's a cis fat, it's a trans fat, right? It's a fat that makes the membrane brittle. So the cell membrane. So, and this is where I love Body Bio and their PC is amazing. I advise for them. I think they're a phenomenal company. That the health of our cells have to do with the health of our cell membrane.
Right.
And the health of our cell membrane generally is made up of the fats that we have assimilated, that means used to our benefit over the last 90 to 120 days. So if we take a bunch of fat and we can't break it down, that's not going to help our cell membrane. That actually makes our cell membrane brittle and can lead to DNA interruption and DNA damage. And the PUFAs now, polyunsaturated fatty acids, not all of them are created equal because avocado is a polyunsaturated fatty acid, olive oil, right? Not all things are all bad all the time. Now, if you have a histamine response, avocado is going to kick your butt. If you're super fat malabsorbed, avocado may not be great for you. However, if you really have estrogen metabolism issues, avocado is going to help you metabolize that estrogen. It's an estrogen metabolizer. That's why it looks like a wound. That's the doctrine of signatures from an herbalist perspective. So I don't believe that seed oils are good because seed oils they're anything that is roasted and cooked will convert this good fat to a bad fat. Okay. Mercola has been harping on this for a long time. Dave Asprey's talking about it now. Many people are on the PUFA bandwagon, right? Mm-hmm. Get off of seed oils. Seed oils are horrible. Now, again, grape seed may not be terrible if you have raw oil. I love my oils. The ones that I take personally is EEOV olive oil and butter. Those are what I cook with. That's it. But I will tell you, for the first time in my life, because of the LDL cholesterol through the histamine response, I was fat malabsorbed for the first time in my life. And so I had to back off my nuts and my seeds, which I used to consume daily. I had to back off my butter. I had to back off my cheeses because guess what? I was getting thick around the middle and I didn't like that. I'm like, I've not changed my food supply in a while and I've eaten into my genetic blueprint in my current state of health. But here comes the pesky little insider that disrupted my LDL that made me for the first time have elevated cholesterol and oxidated cholesterol, which I've never had. And so I had to back off my fats, even my happy fats. And when I did, and I was taking in cream in the morning, happy cream, because, it's good for my brain. Well, I hit my tipping point in this new environment.
Teri, I cannot believe this. I mean, we need five hours before we go. And the immune mover and the stress mover, tell people why and how they help with all that's going on right now.
Well, I call my immune mover my everyone's every day because it is broad spectrum support to the immune system. It has herbals in there that support bacterial balance, parasitic balance, viral balance. It helps. It has a little bit of barberry in there, which helps with insulin balance. It's got antihistamines in there. It's just, I take it. I cannot tell you. I travel, as you know, Sarah, just crazy amounts. I've traveled. I was just sharing right before we went on air. I will have traveled 5 times this month, and I knocked out a 6th travel because I'm also in clinic when I'm here. And I travel cross country. I don't just travel here, little bits, and cross country back and forth. And my stress, my immune mover saves my butt. If I feel like I'm getting even a little bit, I just up the dosing, and it kicks it within 24 hours. You have to get it early, because these little guys multiply really fast. I carry it with me in my purse. It's incredible. Everyone's new every day. We've got young children taking it. Again, if you have any specific allergies, there's a walnut husk in there and a walnut. You're an N of 1, but children take it. Pediatric to geriatric take it. My whole family takes it. My whole staff takes it. And then stress mover has been called the God pill and the chill pill. And why is this important? Because it modulates the HPA axis, which modulates our stress response and the histamine response. And especially with histamine now being linked to idiopathic anxiety disorder, and histamine being linked to panic attacks and tachycardia and insulin disruption, it's been a really big game changer for many people. And we were out for a bit, and people were freaking out. It was back in stock. And I just believe that unless you have an MAOA variant, which is you can't break down serotonin, because there's a teeny bit of rhodiola in there, which keeps serotonin high or modulated, then that wouldn't be good for you. But other than that, it's very safe. And we've had, again, children as young as 18 months taking it. So again, we're all different. I subscribe to that even with my own supplements, but it's these are two very positive. I'm really proud of the fact that I created these, and they have helped so many people. This is my own formulation, and it's helped just a tremendous amount of people, and that just makes me really happy.
Well, during my issue with my varicella virus escapade, I was taking both of them, and I take them both normally, but I upped my dose of the immune mover. I can't believe how quickly I got over my situation. And I used my Hiwi, as we were talking about that before as well. But the diet is, you cannot not address your diet. And you have to look at these healthy, poisonous foods that are not right for you at that certain state of health. And this is where your expertise are truly on the cutting edge. I just passed a certification, a supplement expert certification. And unfortunately, I had to answer their correct answer, which was against my knowledge. And I'm like, no, this isn't right. Wow. And I wanted to call them, but that's not what you do. So it's unfortunate, because it's not out there. And, we have our mutual friend who was in the hospital, and they asked the nurse, what do you have for electrolytes? And the nurse said, diet soda. So that is where our medical system is, unfortunately, and it's there for emergencies. I needed it when I was in a car accident. Thank God they were there to stitch me up. But for preventative health and to heal the whole system, right? This is the way to go. And Teri, I told you before we came here, I've got a specific referral for you, because you are my person, and I'm so grateful for it. So tell people where they can find you.
Well, we're all over social media. We have an Instagram account, Teri Cochrane Beyond Nutrition. I believe it's very informative. I'm always putting out the latest and greatest as I see it emerging. My website, tericochrane.com, the Wildatarian book on Amazon, the Wildatarian Diet, Living as Nature Intended, podcasts such as yours. But we are here to tell a new truth. And I know we just have a minute left, but I have to share this anecdotal story of a woman I sat next to on the plane just 4 days ago. And I heard her say, I have an allergy to sulfites. And it took us down this beautiful rabbit hole of edema, heart issues, histamine response. She had it all, and the doctors had no idea. And she had to figure out that it was sulfur, but she didn't know about the histamine and everything else that she was doing that was not helping her. And she'd gained 50 pounds over the pandemic, but a lot of it was water, and it was edema. So people are looking. She's, again, very educated woman, had access to all these doctors in DC, and yet nobody could help her. They just haven't come to this awareness. And one of my gifts in this practice is that because of my applied kinesiology, it helps the body's giving me real-time body intelligence. And so we really do help make those connections, connecting the dots.
And you have never been wrong with me. So I can tell you that for this N of one, thank you. And thank you so much. And you're always a wealth of knowledge. You guys, go back and listen to this 3 times over, please. And ask your questions in group coaching. I'm there. I will answer. And reach out to Teri. If you are at a loss, you know, there are answers out there. So thank you, Teri. And thanks everyone else for joining us. If you need my help, you can reach out to me at sarabantahealth.com. Happy to put together a protocol for you or lead you to the right direction. And join my free group coaching on Telegram. There's no downside. I share daily tips and tools to improve your health and answer your questions. You'll be surrounded by a community of people who are on the same path. More information at sarabantahealth.com. Of course, don't forget to follow me on social media at Accelerated Health Products, and you can catch this podcast on over 100 platforms, including Spotify, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. Just search Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show. I'm on a mission. I need your help to spread this word. So share this podcast with a few of your friends who might need my help. And remember, I'm live every Monday and Tuesday, a bonus one on Thursday. And you can use coupon WELCOME10 to get 10% off your first order. And that includes the stress mover and the immune mover as well. Thanks again for joining us here, and have a great week.